back to Get Up. Let's keep it rolling here. More NBA free agency talk. Wendy is here to talk us through some of his Wendy watch. Let's start with Tyrese Maxey, Wendy.
Yeah, Woj just told us 5 years, $204 million. This is a twin deal that'll go along with Paul George. This was really sort of established last summer when Maxey was in position to get essentially the same contract. Daryl Morey made a partnership with him. Trust me, he will take care of you. Just leave the cap space open. It's all paid off. Obviously a big day for Maxey and the 76ers. Speaking of that, you may have heard the 76ers have locked down Paul George. Another separate but much more interesting $200 million contract. 4 years, $212 million. Woj broke the news in the middle of the night. This was something that was headed towards becoming a union after the Clippers refused to increase their offer over the last few days of free agency. Even though there were other teams interested in Paul George, the team that had the cap space to make a straight signing and had a championship aspiration was Philly. The two of them found each other and made this deal in a definite league-changing situation. Chris Paul has not been a free agent in the 20 years he's been in the league. Well, he was one for about 10 minutes yesterday. The Warriors decided to move on, cutting him from his $30 million non-guaranteed contract, understanding they couldn't find a trade for him. San Antonio had been eyeing this for weeks. They swoop in with a one-year, $11 million deal. He will now mentor Victor Wembanyama and really upgrade the overall playmaking on the Spurs roster. And we still have one major free agent really out there, and that's Klay Thompson, another player who will be leaving the Warriors. Right now, the Warriors, from what I am told, are in discussions with both the Lakers and the Mavericks about sign and trade deals for Klay. The Mavericks right now are in a little bit better position because they have already made a trade involving Tim Hardaway Jr., opening a trade exception, which could be attractive to the Warriors. The Lakers have a window to do the same thing. We'll see if they're able to do it, but they're both trying to give Klay contracts in the 4-year, $70 million range in a sign and trade. I wouldn't rule out the Clippers, Brian. They're still in there. They would have to do a sign and trade at this point with the Warriors, but I think it's coming down to the Mavs and the Lakers, with the Mavs in the lead at this point.
Well, if you look at the Western Conference Finals, that's what the Mavs needed. They needed somebody to knock down some threes stylistically on the court. He'd be great for the Mavs, Tim. So Klay Thompson on the Mavericks would be like who?
Like when Ray Allen went from Boston to Miami. Checks a lot of boxes. Aging Celtics roster, acrimonious departure, goes to a championship contending team. Obviously, Miami a little bit higher in the pecking order back then with the big three than where the Mavs are. But look, the Mavs just went to the finals. Obviously, they could have really used another shooter in the finals. And I think Dallas is in the group of teams atop the West with Oklahoma City, with Minnesota, with Denver. I wouldn't put them at the top of the list, but they're unquestionably in a better position than the Lakers. And to me, when you're talking about obviously no income tax in Texas,
right,
obviously you're getting more money then,
yeah,
better stylistic fit, getting threes next to Luka Doncic, and just a much better team. To me, makes a ton of sense for Klay to go to Dallas. If he goes to LA, it's just for family reasons, nostalgia reasons, location reasons, as opposed to the best basketball fit. There's no question what the better basketball fit is.
Tell me why it's the perfect landing spot for Klay.
Well, let's start with the petty, the revenge factor, right? Oh, you gave Wiggins $100 million, you gave Draymond $100 million. I can't get $100 million. All right, watch me as you dismantle this dynasty. I'm going to get another ring. So you start there, right? Winning is the ultimate revenge. Start with that. Now, he might not publicly have that outward, but in his heart, that's definitely got to be part of it.
He's a super proud guy.
Yes, and there's a lot, there's a lot of underlying emotion with this whole thing. So let's start there. Number two, it's also for both of them a perfect fit on many levels. If you're the Dallas Mavericks, this is a guy you should target because of what he brings that you were missing. You mentioned it in the Western Conference Finals, talking about the NBA Finals, under 32% three-point shooting. When you have Luka Doncic on the floor, when you have Kyrie Irving on the floor, you need spacing, you need shooting.
You know what else they needed? Veteran experience.
There you go. I was going there next. A guy that's been there at the highest level, who's played on the biggest stage, who when they get there again, if they can, now you're not as inexperienced because he knows he's been there. Kyrie was the one in Luka's ear because Kyrie had been there before telling him, are you tired? You're supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to feel.
Extraordinarily.
And they did.
In that
overwhelmed.
And Klay Thompson, I was there for Game 6 in Oklahoma City. He's obviously had all these moments. He's won 4 rings. Like that's the kind of experience that you need to add to that group.
And then the last thing is that Klay Thompson has the unique experience of playing with an overwhelming entity in a guy like Steph Curry, an all-world player that everything revolves around. And you have to learn how to play with guys like that. It's not easy. Ask Porzingis. There's other players who have said this. Playing with Luka Doncic is not easy. because you don't know what he's going to do. But you better be ready when that ball comes because you need to hit that shot. Klay Thompson, that's exactly what he's been doing his whole career. He knows how to play around players like this, and he is exactly what the Mavs could use. All the different things that we have laid out. It is the perfect fit. We've talked about Paul George fitting with the Sixers, how it is both needed each other. I think personally for Klay Thompson, he needs the Mavericks, and the Mavericks need him.
So then do you think it's Klay or bust for the Lakers?
I mean, it depends on what you're saying. If it's to make the playoffs again, sure. I would say it's Klay or bust. But, are we talking about them being a championship contending team? Then they're busted. This is not a team that's good enough to be a serious threat in the West. They're not a serious threat to me to win a round in the playoffs. And I don't think that making a move like this would really change that. To me, if I'm the Lakers, what I'm doing is holding on to my chips.
Yep.
I'm not moving D'Angelo Russell for stuff.
Not
and I'm
yet.
waiting to potentially make moves during the season. Because if you have to pay a team to take D'Angelo Russell, and then you have to pay the Warriors to do a sign and trade, all of a sudden you're sending out all these assets to add one guy in his mid-30s that isn't really changing the Lakers' destiny. They need to take a longer-term approach and try to add some pieces that have some longer-term potential. I just don't think this makes any
And what's the thing the Lakers can't really afford? That Klay Thompson once in his career was this, but not anymore, perimeter defense.
Right.
They can't afford to have an issue on the perimeter where, okay, yes, he can space, he can shoot, he'd be a great fit with LeBron, but at the other end, are you losing something there? They have to commit to what they have right now, let J.J. Redick figure out what they have, and then as the season goes on, like you're saying, I think during the season is where the Lakers, if they are a very competitive team, if they are getting closer to the trade deadline, then you start to say, who's somebody that we can target to go get that'll put us over the top, that'll get us there. But if you're not top 6 in the West before the trade deadline, what are we doing?
So Wendy, we know your reporting was LeBron called. Obviously, Klay, as soon as free agency began, LeBron has said, hey, I'll take as less as $20 million to sign a guy like Klay Thompson. Give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I understand Laker fans are probably saying, what about LeBron taking less? That's what you guys were talking about yesterday. Yes, LeBron has said he will take less for a player like Klay Thompson. But to make this work, this transaction work, the Lakers are very likely going to have to make a separate trade that offloads some money. In fact, the Mavericks, even though they've offloaded Tim Hardaway, may need to make another trade as well because they're going to sign Najee Marshall away from the Pelicans, which is a different story. The Lakers may have that trade. They may be working on it right now involving D'Angelo Russell or Gabe Vincent or somebody. But until they have that trade, it's hard to make an apples-to-apples comparison on the value of the offer. And then when it comes to the actual talent and what they've just done this past season, it's not really comparable. The Mavericks are significantly ahead. But that doesn't mean the Lakers won't get a move here. There's other players they can look at. DeMar DeRozan is a player that LeBron might consider taking less money for, I'm told. So let's... I know Klay is the focus of the moment, and sure, the Lakers are working on it, but there are other things the Lakers can look at as well.
You know, the interesting thing is we've always talked about this dynasty that the Golden State Warriors have had. Now, all of a sudden, it seems to be coming apart here. You know, Zach Lowe talked about this on our show. I want you to take a listen to what Zach Lowe had to say about Klay leaving and what it means for the Warriors.
This is the end of something magical in basketball. Like, this was a dynastic team, and this guy, from the threes in Oklahoma City to the threes against Toronto to coming out with a busted ACL to shoot the free throws to the loudest ovation I heard in that arena ever. This is the end of something, and we need to take a moment to appreciate it. We also need to take a moment to ask, what's plan B here for this team that has one of the 10 to 12 greatest players of all time still playing at an all-NBA level?
You know, Wendy, I remember hearing, and this was like last week where you were talking about, hey, look, Golden State's trying to do any and everything they can to upgrade this team, especially while Steph Curry is still, elite. So what can they do to improve this team in the short term now that we know that Klay's leaving?
Well, there's a possibility that in a Klay Thompson sign and trade, they may be able to land an asset or two that they can use in a separate trade. And I think they're looking at that. One player I think that they're looking at is Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. The Jazz have put Markkanen available on the market. They're talking to a number of teams. There is significant interest in him. He is a prototypical player, stretch the floor, big man in the modern NBA. There are teams interested in him. He potentially could be a move for the Warriors, not unlike the way Porzingis was a move for the Celtics a year ago. However, the Jazz's price when it comes to any player that they're trading is very high. So meeting that, I shouldn't think, it wouldn't be assumed that any team could meet it or that the Warriors would win a bidding war. But the Warriors are not done here. And if they're not able to make a transaction in this cycle over the summer, it doesn't mean they're going to fold their tent. They have good young pieces that they're going to have move in to replace Klay Thompson, and they'll be able to have draft picks that they can trade and potentially an asset they get back for Klay that they can move later on. So they are definitely no longer, in my view, a serious championship contender at this moment, but don't sleep on them. Don't rule them out from making another move in the wake of a losing Klay, Klay and Chris Paul.
The Lakers and Warriors are in the same place. They're both teams that we talk about a lot for obvious reasons, but they're not championship contenders. Brian just summed it up. They're in a better position than the Lakers because they do have more young talent. They do have a better balanced roster. They do have, I think, the ability to make more moves than the Lakers do. But again, we're talking about a team that's hoping to get back in the top 6, hoping to get back in the playoffs again, right? There's a long way to go to catch up with Oklahoma City, to catch up with Dallas, to catch up with Minnesota, to catch up with Denver, even after losing KCP. Like, there's a big gap there. And even if they do make a swing for Lauri Markkanen, there's still probably a gap there. And Lauri Markkanen's really good.
He's a good player.
I like that fit. But, let's also look at, you mentioned they do have at least some young players. Jonathan Kuminga finished the season where he started to crackle a little bit, right? He started to jump off the page a little bit, like it's starting to figure out for him. Can he be a splash nephew? Can they turn him into somebody that can work with Steph Curry, that can you can build something there. Steph Curry might be 36. He still has a lot left, clearly, right? But
he's still really good, but he's 36.
Right. No,
he's
understood.
Just not quite good enough to get them there by himself anymore.
As your best player, but he's still going to be your best talent. So how do you properly build the talent around? I like the idea of Markkanen. Again, on paper, all this stuff has to still be worked out. But that's exactly what you're looking for. But for Golden State, it's going to be about, can they get Kuminga to that next level, so then they can start saying, okay, now it's worth piling on some money or making some moves to turn this into something. The start of next season will tell us a lot about where Kuminga is with Steph Curry.
All right, well.